The war on Krylor 9 had been raging for months. The planet's surface was torn by craters, burning cities, and the constant roar of alien engines. Two great alien factions, the Zytrons and the Orcans, were locked in a brutal struggle. Neither side would yield, and the galaxy watched with fear and fascination. High above the planet, in a massive orbital station, alien commanders laughed. "They say humans are clever," one Zytron officer hissed. His blue-skinned fingers drummed against the console. "Let's see if this one lives 5 minutes in a real war zone." The plan was simple. One human soldier would be dropped onto the battlefield, alone, unarmed beyond a basic survival kit, and left to his own devices. The aliens thought it would be entertaining, a game to pass the long hours of interstellar boredom. In a small drop pod, Captain Alex Rourke braced himself. The pod shuddered as it detached from the orbital station. Alex had trained for emergencies, for extreme situations, but nothing like this. Krylor 9 was a war zone. Every city, every forest, every crater could hide enemies. But he had something the aliens did not: human adaptability. The pod streaked through the atmosphere. Fire roared along its sides, and the heat shield screamed as it battled the planet's gravity. Alex's heart pounded, but he kept calm. Years of survival training flashed through his mind. Observe first, act second. No heroics, just thinking. The eye. Pod hit the surface with a heavy thud in the ruins of a once great city. Dust and smoke filled the air. Broken vehicles, twisted metal, and abandoned buildings made the place look like a graveyard. He opened the hatch, scanning the horizon. Smoke columns rose in the distance, marking the locations of fighting. Alien troops moved with purpose, unaware that one human had landed among them. Alex crouched low, moving through the rubble. His first rule was clear: avoid unnecessary attention. He could hear distant explosions and the clatter of alien weaponry. Zytrons were fast and reckless, charging ahead without care. Orcans were heavily armored, slow, but their weapons could tear through anything in seconds. A direct fight would be suicide. He paused near the edge of a crater, watching a squad of Zytrons chase down a lone Orcan scout. The human observed their tactics carefully. Zytrons relied on speed and aggression, while Orcans depended on brute force and fortified positions. If he could use the terrain, he could manipulate both sides without ever facing them head-on. His first move was small but deliberate. Using debris and old city structures, he set a simple trap: a loose bridge, a small energy charge, and a cleverly placed decoy. Minutes later, the Zytrons fell for it. The bridge collapsed, sending a squad tumbling into the crater. The explosions echoed across the battlefield. High above, the aliens in orbit blinked at their screens. "Impressive," muttered a Zytron. "Commander. But it is only one human. He cannot last." Alex moved quickly, learning the battlefield as he went. He scavenged weapons from destroyed alien drones, reprogrammed a few small machines to serve as distractions, and even used the terrain to mask his movements. Every step he took was calculated. Every decision mattered. By midday, Alex had done something remarkable. He had avoided multiple skirmishes, set traps that slowed both armies, and gathered information about alien positions. From a crumbling skyscraper, he watched a Zytron command outpost in the distance. It was heavily fortified, but it also controlled a network of communications that could change the flow of battle. He smiled slightly under his helmet. One human soldier, alone, could already start to influence the outcome of this war. Not through sheer firepower, but through intelligence, observation, and clever thinking. The aliens watching from orbit began to lean forward, intrigued. Their amusement had turned into curiosity. "This human," said one Orcan officer, "he is unusual." Alex paused as he heard distant screams and the sound of engines. A squad of Zytrons was moving toward a small village to the east. Civilians, aliens, yes, but innocent nonetheless, were in danger. Humans had a way of acting differently. He could not simply ignore it. Using his knowledge of both sides, Alex set a series of small diversions. He triggered old buildings to collapse in controlled ways, creating barriers that slowed the Zytrons. Small drones, reprogrammed, emitted false signals, making it seem as though forces were approaching from the north. Confused, the Zytrons stumbled. Civilians escaped. By evening, the sun cast long shadows across Krylor 9's cratered landscape. Alex stood atop a ruined tower, looking over the battlefield. He had not fired a single weapon directly at the main armies, yet already his influence was being felt. Alien commanders whispered over their channels. Reports came in. The human is moving again. He is too clever. We underestimated him. For the first time, the human smiled openly. He had landed in a war zone meant to amuse the aliens, meant to prove that humans were weak. Yet he was still alive. And he was not just surviving, he was learning, adapting, and planning. The shadows of Krylor 9 grew longer as the sun sank. Explosions echoed faintly in the distance, signaling that the war would continue, but Alex had a plan. Tomorrow, he would move closer to the Zytron outpost. He would study it, learn its defenses, and find ways to turn the tide. One human against armies, an impossible challenge to anyone else. But to Alex, it was simply a problem to solve. And somewhere high above, in orbit, the aliens watched, still confident, but now just a little nervous, because the human had arrived. And Krylor 9 would never be the same. The sun rose over Krylor 9, casting pale light across the jagged ruins and smoking craters. Captain Alex Rourke had survived the first day, and now he knew one thing. Survival alone was not enough. He had to learn, adapt, and use every advantage the planet offered. Alex crouched behind a collapsed wall, scanning the area. The alien armies were still scattered, each focused on its own fight. The Zytrons charged recklessly through open fields, while the Orcans advanced methodically, their heavy armor making them slow but dangerous. Both sides underestimated him. That was about to change. He moved quietly through the ruins, marking positions of alien units on a makeshift map. From his observations, he realized the Zytrons were aggressive but predictable. They relied on speed and brute force, often ignoring strategy. The Orcans, on the other hand, were cautious and precise. They used communication networks to coordinate their attacks, but their slow response made them vulnerable to unexpected tactics. Alex spotted an abandoned factory nearby. The building was massive, with broken machinery and large ventilation tunnels. He decided it would be the perfect place to set traps. Using his minimal tools and some alien tech scavenged from the battlefield, he rigged explosives to doors, set tripwires across corridors, and even created a few noise-making devices to confuse intruders. As he worked, Alex thought about the bigger picture. He could not defeat the armies head-on, not yet, but he could influence the battlefield, making both sides hesitate and fight among themselves. He smiled quietly. Humans were small in the galaxy, yes, but we were clever. The first test came sooner than expected. A patrol of Zytrons entered the factory, unaware of the human hiding inside. Alex triggered a small diversion, a loud explosion in the north wing. Confused, the Zytrons split up, and he led them through a maze of collapsing machinery. One by one, they fell into traps he had set. None died, but they were immobilized, stuck until reinforcements arrived. Watching from a shadowed corner, Alex studied their reactions. They panicked, their command structure faltering. The human realized something important. Fear was a weapon. Not fear of him as an individual, but fear of the unknown, fear of traps and surprises. He could use it to control the battlefield. He left the factory before the patrol could recover, moving silently through the ruined streets. Civilians, alien and native, were fleeing from nearby battles. Alex made sure to guide them to safety, using detours and hidden paths. Every rescue, every clever trick he used to avoid or redirect enemies, built his reputation, even if the aliens didn't yet know it. In a cratered plain, Alex found the remains of an old human installation, long abandoned. Energy panels and small. Defense systems still functioned. He spent hours repairing what he could, creating rudimentary surveillance drones and motion sensors. With these, he could track enemy movements without exposing himself. The installation became his temporary command center, a place where one human could observe hundreds of alien soldiers. That evening, Alex tested his new tools. Small drones flew over enemy lines, relaying movements and positions. The data allowed him to plan his next moves with precision. He realized that the Zytrons and Orcs were too focused on each other to notice one human controlling the flow of the battle from the shadows. Then came the first real confrontation. A group of Orcs moved toward a vital supply depot, unaware that Alex had rigged the area. Using the drones and sensors, he triggered collapses, barricades, and loud noises, creating chaos among the heavily armored soldiers. Some fell into pits, some were blocked by falling debris. None were killed, but the disruption delayed their advance for hours. Above him, satellites from orbited alien stations monitored the battlefield. Messages crackled through the channels. The human is manipulating positions. He is affecting our forces without engaging directly. Shock and confusion ran through the alien commanders. How could a single human influence a war they had fought for centuries? Alex took a moment to breathe. The first day had been survival. The second day was observation and learning. But now, he was actively changing the battlefield. He had not fired a single powerful weapon at the armies, yet they were starting to fear him. He moved to a vantage point atop a ruined skyscraper and looked toward the Zytron command outpost. Its position was critical. If he could gather intelligence or disrupt its operations, he could tilt the balance of the war entirely. But he knew he had to be careful. One mistake, one careless move, and he could be discovered and overwhelmed. Using his drones and makeshift signals, Alex began mapping the outpost's defenses. He noticed patterns. Zytrons rotated guards in predictable shifts, communication lines ran openly through the central towers, and smaller units patrolled in tight, visible groups. A human mind could exploit these patterns. A human mind could turn fear into a weapon. Night fell over Krylor 9, and Alex retreated to a hidden alcove in the city ruins. The battlefield quieted, but the sense of tension was palpable. Explosions still rang in the distance, but the alien armies were confused. The Zytrons were wary of traps, slowing their movements. The Orcs were cautious, second-guessing orders. The battlefield itself had become a chessboard, and Alex was thinking several moves ahead. He ate his minimal rations and checked his equipment. He was tired, but his mind was alive with ideas. Every observation, every minor victory, was another step toward something greater. He was alone, yes, but not powerless. He was not a simple soldier dropped into a war zone. He was a strategist, an innovator, and a human being who refused to be controlled by fear. Looking out at the war-torn horizon, Alex felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The aliens thought this was a game, an amusement. They did not understand. Humans, our persistence, our ingenuity, or our willingness to face impossible odds. But he was beginning to show them. Tomorrow, he thought, he would move closer to the Zytron outpost. He would study it, understand it, and find a way to exploit it. One human alone could survive the day. One human alone could manipulate armies. And Alex intended to prove it. The stars above Krylor 9 twinkled faintly, indifferent to the struggles below. But down on the planet's scarred surface, one human was already changing the course of the battle. The aliens had dropped him for fun. But Alex had other plans. Krylor 9 had survived centuries of wars, but it would remember this human. And tomorrow, the stakes would rise even higher. The sun rose pale and cold over Krylor 9, painting the cratered cities in gold and gray. Captain Alex Rourke had survived 2 days in a war zone that would have killed most soldiers before breakfast. But survival was no longer enough. He wanted more. He wanted to change the battle, not just avoid it. From his hidden vantage point, Alex watched the alien armies shift across the ruins. The Zytrons, fast and aggressive, still underestimated him. The Orcs, slow but powerful, hesitated, unsure, where the human might strike next. Alex smiled. Both sides were playing into his hands without realizing it. He decided to make his first bold move. Using drones and sensors he had repaired from an old human installation, he mapped the positions of both armies. He discovered something crucial. The Zytrons and Orcs were dangerously close to colliding near a canyon system. A single misstep could trigger chaos, and Alex intended to make it happen, but on his terms. First, he created small distractions. Explosions, debris falling from ruined buildings, and sound devices triggered far from his location made it seem like large forces were moving where none existed. Zytron squads rushed to investigate phantom threats. Orcs reinforced empty positions. Alex watched from the shadows, noting every reaction. Then he moved. Alex slipped through a series of tunnels and abandoned streets, leading the Zytrons toward a natural bottleneck in the canyon. The traps he had prepared earlier, fallen boulders, wire snares, and remote-triggered explosions, were all ready. When the first Zytrons entered the canyon, they triggered them. A loud roar of falling rocks and chaos erupted. Several soldiers were trapped or forced back, and the rest panicked, retreating in confusion. High above, alien commanders blinked at their screens. "How is he doing this?" one Orcan officer demanded. "One human. He is controlling our forces like a commander." The aliens were beginning to realize their amusement had gone terribly wrong. Alex didn't stop. Using his drones, he monitored the Zytron's retreat. He saw small groups of stranded Orcan soldiers, isolated and vulnerable. Human empathy, mixed with strategy, made him act. He slipped through a ruined alley, leading a small rescue. By using shadows, misdirection, and his traps, he guided the stranded soldiers away from danger without revealing himself. They didn't know who helped them. They only knew the human's presence was felt. As Alex returned to his observation point, he noticed the Zytron outpost in the distance. It controlled a communications network that connected the battlefield. If he could disrupt it, both armies would lose coordination. But the outpost was heavily guarded, and a direct assault was impossible. He would need cleverness. He studied the patrol rotations and the patterns of energy shields. There were gaps, short windows where sensors would briefly falter. Using one of his small drones, Alex sent in a diversion, an old, patched-together device emitting heat signatures mimicking a human soldier. The Zytrons took the bait, moving to intercept a phantom threat. Alex's drone relayed camera feeds, showing him exactly how to move undetected. That evening, he acted. With precise timing, he sneaked close to the perimeter of the outpost. Using a combination of shadow, terrain, and the alien tech he had scavenged, he disabled a communication relay. A ripple ran through both armies. Orders failed, coordination faltered, and confusion spread. Alex grinned. One human had already begun to turn the tide of a planetary war. But it wasn't just about sabotage. Alex wanted to inspire, even if subtly. Along the way, he left signs that someone clever and fearless was guiding movements. Marks in the dirt, signals, and minor interventions hinted at a presence watching over alien troops and civilians alike. Word spread through the alien soldiers, like a whisper. A human was here. And he was not just surviving, he was outsmarting them. Alex moved again, this time to a ruined plaza where small groups of alien civilians had gathered. Using small engineering devices, he created protective barriers and guided them to safer zones. Civilians, frightened and desperate, began to rely on his unseen intervention. Humans had a way of seeing patterns and creating solutions where others saw chaos. It was not brute force, but intelligence and foresight. The next morning, the battlefield was quiet in some areas, but tension lingered everywhere. Both alien armies were wary. The Zytrons avoided open terrain, slowing their attacks. The Orcans hesitated before sending forces into the fields. Alex had created an invisible influence, controlling the flow without engaging directly in battle. From his new vantage point atop a ruined skyscraper, Alex noticed something unexpected. A small band of alien soldiers, weary and disillusioned, seemed hesitant to fight. The human mind could understand motivation. He sent a small drone with a simple signal, harmless yet persuasive. The alien soldiers followed the path he indicated, moving to neutral zones rather than clashing in pointless skirmishes. Slowly, he began forming loose alliances, even among enemies, by showing them that one human could think beyond fear, anger, or orders. By midday, Alex had done something remarkable. One human soldier, alone, had reshaped the battlefield. He had slowed enemy advances, rescued civilians, disrupted communications, and influenced troops without ever firing a major weapon. His ingenuity and courage were becoming legendary, even if the aliens watching from orbit refused to admit it. As the sun began to set, Alex paused to observe. The Zytron outpost still stood, heavily defended, but the confusion he had caused gave him an advantage. Tomorrow, he could move closer, gather more intelligence, and possibly strike in a way that would shock both armies. The idea of a single human taking control of events across an entire battlefield was not theoretical anymore, it was happening. Alex thought about the aliens who had dropped him into the war zone for fun. They had assumed he would die quickly, providing entertainment. Instead, he was teaching them a lesson. Humans were not weak, not predictable, and not easily dismissed. They underestimated ingenuity, creativity, and adaptability at their peril. The stars began to twinkle over Krylor 9, indifferent to the struggles below. But down on the war-torn surface, one human was quietly rewriting the rules. He was no longer just surviving. He was learning, influencing, and preparing to take the next bold step. Tomorrow, Krylor 9 would see just how far one human could go. And both alien armies, still unaware of the full scope of his plan, were about to find out. The next morning, Krylor 9 was quieter than before. Smoke still rose from distant battles, but the alien armies were tense, cautious, and uncertain. Captain Alex Rourke had spent the night planning his next move. The time had come to strike boldly. The Zytron outpost loomed in the distance, a heavily guarded hub of communications and command. If he could disrupt it, he could control the battlefield entirely. Alex approached cautiously, using shadowed ruins and ventilation tunnels he had scouted earlier. The outpost was surrounded by patrolling Zytrons and high-energy shields. Direct attack would mean certain death. But Alex was not like other soldiers. He did not rely on brute force. He relied on cleverness. He triggered his first diversion. Small devices created phantom troop movements far to the north. Alarms blared in. The outpost. Zytron soldiers raced to investigate, leaving the perimeter thinner than before. Alex moved silently, sliding between shadows, crawling through debris and avoiding sensors. Each step was calculated. Every second mattered. Inside the outpost, he discovered something even more valuable, a communication console linked to both Zytron and Orcan command networks. He studied it carefully. noting passwords and signal patterns. With a few careful taps and modifications, Alex rerouted some transmissions. Suddenly, orders from the Zytron command were delayed, misdirected, or misinterpreted. Chaos spread across the battlefield. Outside, the alien soldiers noticed strange behavior in their units. The Orcs hesitated as they received conflicting information. The Zytrons argued over commands, unsure of what to do. For the first time, the human presence was not only felt, it was felt across both armies. Alex didn't stop at sabotage. He moved deeper into the outpost, planting small energy. Disruptors at key power nodes. These devices would trigger minor malfunctions in weapons systems, slowing down reinforcements and defensive turrets. His goal was not destruction, but control. A human's mind could direct events without bloodshed if applied wisely. As he prepared to leave, he noticed a group of Zytron soldiers entering a storage area. They were exhausted, demoralized, and careless. Alex used a small grappling device to drop a net and gently trap them without harming them. He quietly guided them toward cover and set them on a path away from the main battlefield. Confused but unharmed, the soldiers would later spread rumors of the mysterious human who appeared and vanished like a ghost. By mid-afternoon, the outpost was in partial disarray. Communication lines were compromised, soldiers were disoriented, and minor internal malfunctions slowed weapon systems. The balance of power had shifted. Alex moved back to his observation point atop a ruined skyscraper. From there, he could see the effects of his actions. Zytrons hesitated before charging, Orcs second-guessed orders, and small groups of alien civilians were being evacuated safely from dangerous zones. It was then that Alex noticed a strange sight. A small squad of alien soldiers, weary and disillusioned, approached him indirectly, following paths he had subtly cleared. They were not coming to fight him. They were curious, cautious, and perhaps willing to listen. Alex realized he could influence even enemy soldiers without confrontation. By showing cleverness, courage, and fairness, he could reshape the battlefield in ways no one expected. The sun began to sink low, casting long shadows across the ruined city. Alex felt a sense of satisfaction. He had infiltrated the enemy outpost, disrupted command, and manipulated the battlefield, all without firing a major weapon at the main armies. One human soldier, alone, had done what many entire units could not. He also knew that the next step would be the most daring yet. If he could secure the main supply routes, capture alien equipment, and control key vantage points, he could dictate the movements of both armies. The human mind, adaptive and inventive, could turn fear, confusion, and unpredictability into powerful weapons. As he prepared to descend from his vantage point, he heard the distant roar of engines. A Zytron reinforcement group was approaching. Using his drones, Alex studied their formation. They were fast, confident, and unaware of the traps laid in the streets below. With careful timing, he triggered small collapses and noise devices. Rocks tumbled, alarms sounded, and the alien reinforcements slowed, stumbled, and eventually withdrew from the area without understanding why. Alien commanders in orbit were now visibly shaken. "He controls the battlefield," one exclaimed. "One human soldier. How is this possible?" Another muttered, "We turned it into a game, and now it is out of our hands." Alex paused to catch his breath, looking over the war-torn horizon. The Zytron outpost had been partially neutralized, communications were unreliable, and the battlefield was chaotic, but in a controlled way. Civilians were safe, enemy soldiers were confused, and both armies were reacting exactly as he predicted. He realized something important. Humans were underestimated not because they were weak, but because they could adapt, think, and create solutions, where others saw chaos. One human could outsmart entire armies if he understood patterns, motivation, and timing. That lesson would not be forgotten by Krylor 9 or by the alien forces who watched helplessly from above. Night fell, and the stars appeared in the sky above Krylor 9. Alex took a moment to rest in a hidden alcove. He ate minimal rations and checked his equipment, but his mind was already planning the next phase. Tomorrow, he would push further. He would move closer to the command centers, influence larger groups of soldiers, and prepare for the decisive moves that could take the planet completely. The aliens had dropped him into a war zone for fun, expecting to see a human fail. Instead, they had witnessed a masterclass in strategy, observation, and cleverness. Alex Rourke was no ordinary soldier. He was a human who could think beyond fear, beyond orders, beyond brute force, and the battlefield was now his canvas. Somewhere high above, the alien commanders reluctantly began to reconsider their plan. One human soldier had survived, outsmarted, and disrupted forces meant to be overwhelming. The lesson was clear. Humans were not weak, not predictable, and certainly not a game to be played with. As he looked at the distant glow of the war-torn cities, Alex allowed himself a small smile. The next day would bring new challenges, but he was ready. He had survived, adapted, and struck boldly. One human, alone, had already changed the course of Krylor 9's war, and by the time the sun rose again, the battlefield would feel the full measure of his ingenuity. The battlefield of Krylor 9 was tense and chaotic as the sun rose over the ruined cities. Captain Alex Rourke had spent days studying, planning, and manipulating both the Zytron and Orcan armies. Today, he would push further. Today, he would take the final steps toward controlling the planet. From his vantage point atop a collapsed skyscraper, Alex surveyed the approaching forces. Both armies were massing near the capital. Zytrons moved fast, relying on numbers and aggression. Orcans moved carefully, bringing heavy weapons and armored vehicles. Both sides were confused and cautious, thanks to Alex's earlier disruptions. Every misstep, every hesitation had been orchestrated, guiding the battlefield exactly where he wanted it. Alex checked his equipment and drones. They had proven invaluable in monitoring enemy movements and setting traps. He had also repaired old human technology from abandoned facilities, automated turrets, motion sensors, and small energy devices that could create chaos without risking lives. All of it would be used strategically today. He began with small strikes to confuse the enemy. Using his drones, Alex triggered explosions and collapses in specific areas. Zytron forces diverted to investigate, while Oricans hesitated, unsure of which orders to follow. The battlefield began to resemble a carefully controlled storm, unpredictable to the aliens but perfectly mapped in Alex's mind. Next, he targeted supply lines. Both armies relied on continuous resupply for weapons and fuel. Alex manipulated routes, causing minor collapses and diversions. Convoys stumbled into traps, delaying reinforcements and frustrating commanders. Soldiers began to whisper among themselves. Something invisible was guiding the chaos. Something clever, fast, and unpredictable. Then came the decisive move. Alex focused on the main approach to the capital, a canyon system surrounded by ruins and high ground. He had prepared traps, barricades, and diversionary devices days before. Now the time had come to use them. As Zytron forces advanced, Alex triggered a sequence of controlled collapses, creating bottlenecks and separating units. Oricans moving to reinforce were slowed by blocked paths and minor malfunctions in their vehicles. Chaos spread, exactly as he intended. From his hidden perch, Alex observed carefully. Small groups of alien soldiers were isolated and disoriented. He could have attacked directly, but he knew better. Humans won battles not always by strength, but by using strategy, timing, and psychology. He allowed the panic to spread, carefully guiding the enemy into positions he had already prepared. In one narrow alley, Alex trapped a squad of Zytrons between falling debris and automated turrets. The soldiers had no idea they were being manipulated. Confused, They surrendered rather than fight. Alex quietly guided them to safety, leaving them unharmed but unable to return to the main battle. Rumors began to circulate among both armies. The human was not just surviving, he was controlling the war. Alex then moved closer to the capital itself. Using old human tunnels and underground passages, he bypassed heavy defenses. From these vantage points, he observed the enemy command centers and supply depots. With minor sabotage, misdirected orders, and cleverly placed devices, he disrupted both Zytron and Orcan coordination. Soldiers argued over conflicting orders, commanders questioned their own strategies, and the capital became a maze of confusion. By mid-afternoon, the battlefield was entirely in Alex's hands, not through brute force, but through clever manipulation and calculated moves. He used drones and sensors to guide civilians safely through danger zones. He rescued isolated alien units who were lost or trapped. He subtly inspired disillusioned soldiers to leave pointless fights and retreat to safer areas. His presence, though mostly unseen, was felt everywhere. Then, as the sun began to sink, Alex prepared for the final strike. The capital's main square was still controlled by Zytrons, heavily guarded and fortified. He didn't need to storm it. He needed to demonstrate his control, to show both armies that one human could dictate the flow of battle. Using every device, trap, and distraction, he orchestrated a spectacular sequence. Barricades fell, vehicles malfunctioned, turrets misfired, and squads found themselves surrounded without realizing it. Alien commanders were furious and terrified. "One human," muttered a Zytron general, staring at the chaos on his screen. "How is this possible?" An Orcan commander barked orders, but soldiers ignored them, confused by the invisible hand that seemed to guide every twist of the battlefield. Alex moved carefully through the chaos, never exposing himself unnecessarily. He reached a vantage point overlooking the main square and triggered the final diversions. The remaining Zytrons and Oricans paused, unsure of which way to fight. He had removed their coordination, disoriented their units, and shown that any direct attack could be dangerous or pointless. By sundown, the battlefield had shifted completely. Both alien armies had halted, weary, confused, and unwilling to advance. Civilians were safe, supply lines were disrupted, and key positions were under control, all thanks to the actions of one human. The rumors of the ghost human spread through the ranks, striking fear and awe into soldiers who had once mocked him. Alex allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The aliens had dropped him into a war zone for amusement, expecting an easy victory. Instead, he had outsmarted them, rescued innocents, and demonstrated human ingenuity in a way that no one had expected. The battlefield was quiet now, not because the war had ended, but because the alien armies recognized that continuing would be futile. The sun set behind the jagged skyline, bathing Kryler 9 in orange and red. Alex stood silently looking over the city. One human soldier had changed the course of a war in a single day. The aliens would not forget it. The humans had shown that they were clever, adaptable, and not to be underestimated. Above the planet, alien commanders watched silently, shaken. The amusement they had hoped for was gone. One human had survived, outmaneuvered, and taken control of the battlefield. It was a lesson they would never forget. Alex felt a quiet pride, not in destruction, but in accomplishment. He had done what many thought impossible. He had turned chaos into order, confusion into control, and fear into respect. Kryler 9 would remember this day, and the galaxy, watching from afar, would begin to understand that humans were far more than they appeared. As night fell, Alex prepared to rest briefly. Tomorrow, he would solidify control and ensure stability, turning a planet lost to war into one where humans had proven their value. One human had taken a planet by sundown, and Kryler 9 would never be the same. Night had fully fallen over Kryler 9. The city ruins glowed faintly from fires still burning in distant battle zones, but the main fighting had stopped. Captain Alex Rourke stood atop a ruined tower, surveying the battlefield he had transformed. One human soldier, alone, had not only survived but had controlled the flow of an entire planetary war. The alien armies, exhausted, confused, and fearful, had halted their advances. Zytron and Orcian commanders barked orders that went unheeded, their units too disoriented to fight effectively. The battlefield had become a silent testament to human ingenuity. Alex had not relied on numbers, nor brute force, nor superior alien technology. He had relied on observation, cleverness, and timing. He began to move through the streets, carefully avoiding remaining patrols. Using his drones and traps, he guided small groups of alien soldiers who were still scattered or lost. He helped civilians reach safer zones. His actions were precise, deliberate, and careful. He did not seek unnecessary conflict. Humans had a way of achieving victory without unnecessary destruction, and Alex embodied that principle. In the main square, he reached the remains of the Zytron Command Center. With a few minor adjustments to the systems, he stabilized communication lines on his terms. Both armies now received clear but controlled information. Orders could be given without confusion, but Alex retained subtle influence. This control allowed him to prevent further bloodshed while maintaining dominance. Alien commanders in orbit were silent. The Zytron general finally spoke through a comm link, his voice tight with disbelief. How did a single human do this? One soldier. He has dominated an entire planet. An Orcian officer muttered under his breath. We thought humans were weak, chaotic, disposable. We were wrong, terribly wrong. Alex remained unseen by these commanders. He had no interest in boasting. His goal had always been clear: survive, protect, and control, not for glory, but to prove a point. Humanity was clever, adaptable, and unyielding. This victory was more than survival. It was a statement to the galaxy. He moved to a vantage point, overlooking both alien armies. Soldiers, exhausted and wary, began to withdraw from unnecessary combat. Some had begun whispering rumors of the human soldier who controlled events like a chess master. Fear mixed with awe in their eyes. Kryler 9 had been a war zone, a place of chaos and death, but now it was calm, not through surrender or destruction, but through strategy and intelligence. Alex turned his attention to the planet itself. Kryler 9 had survived wars for centuries, yet this one day would be remembered. He had influenced outcomes without firing a massive weapon. He had outsmarted armies, protected innocents, and guided both sides to halt their fighting. One human had changed the course of a planetary war, and in doing so, shown what humans were truly capable of. He checked his equipment and confirmed that all systems were functioning. Drones patrolled the perimeter. Minor traps ensured no sudden surprises, and civilian routes were safe. Everything was under control. Alex allowed himself a brief moment of rest, gazing at the stars above Kryler 9. The universe seemed vast and indifferent, but down below, humans had made a mark that no one could ignore. High above in orbit, the alien commanders had no choice but to acknowledge reality. The human soldier had not only survived a war zone for a full day, but had also manipulated the battlefield, influenced alien troops, and secured control of critical locations. The amusement they had hoped for had turned into fear, awe, and respect. The Zytron general sighed heavily. He is not like any human we expected. One soldier, alone. He has forced us to stop, to retreat, to reconsider. The Orcian officer added, We cannot underestimate them. Humans, they think differently. They adapt, they survive, and they win where no one else could. Alex listened quietly from his hidden position. He did not need their praise, he did not need their acknowledgement. But the fact remained, Kryler 9 had changed, and with it, the galaxy's perception of humanity. One human had shown that courage, intelligence, and creativity could surpass numbers, technology, and brute force. As he moved through the city ruins one last time, Alex guided the remaining alien units toward safe zones. He avoided unnecessary confrontation, ensuring that the final moments of the battle would leave no lasting harm. Even in victory, he respected life and the balance of the planet. That was human strength, not just in battle, but in thought and action. By dawn, Kryler 9 was silent. The alien armies had withdrawn, retreating to regroup and reconsider. Civilians were safe, trapped soldiers had been released, and the battlefield was calm. Alex stood in the central square, the wind carrying, faint smoke and dust around him. One human had turned a war zone into a controlled, stabilized environment. One human had survived what no one else could. Above him, the stars glimmered, and alien observers could only stare. Humanity had made its statement. One soldier, alone, had taken a planet by sundown. The galaxy would remember Kryler 9 not as a place of loss, but as a place where a human showed that adaptability, cleverness, and courage could overcome the impossible. Alex allowed himself a small smile. He had survived. He had influenced events. He had proven a simple truth. Humans were not to be underestimated. The aliens had thought dropping him into a war zone would be fun. They had been wrong, terribly wrong. As Kryler 9's first peaceful morning in weeks began, Alex looked to the horizon. The sun rose slowly, bathing the ruined city in soft light. The planet was safe, the armies had retreated, and humanity had left its mark. He would leave soon, returning to his world. But the story of one human soldier changing the course of a planetary war would spread throughout the galaxy. The aliens who had watched, laughed, and doubted would never forget. And humans, as a species, had earned respect and caution from civilizations that once dismissed them. One human had survived a war zone, manipulated armies, and taken control of a planet by sundown. One human had changed history. Captain Alex Rourke turned, walking through the ruins, ready for the next challenge. Kryler 9 would remember him, and the galaxy would remember humanity. And somewhere in the stars, other humans would hear the story and smile, knowing that courage, ingenuity, and determination could conquer even the impossible.